The sand whispers against the tent fabric, a dry, insistent susurrus that mimics the rasp of fear in my throat. Each grain is a tiny drumbeat, a countdown I can't stop. Outside, the darkness is absolute, a velvet curtain pressed close, heavy with unspoken threats. The air itself feels thick, pregnant with the metallic tang of distant gunfire, and the cloying sweetness of something I can't quite place, something decaying. I lie rigid, eyes wide open, staring at the faint phosphorescent glow of my watch, 3:17. Another hour until dawn, another eternity to survive. My hand instinctively clutches the worn, leather-bound journal beneath my makeshift pillow. Its pages are filled with scribbled observations, desperate attempts to capture the ephemeral moments of beauty and terror that punctuate this endless war. It's a futile exercise, I know. Words are inadequate to convey the sheer, visceral reality of living on the edge of oblivion, of sleeping next to landmines, both literal and metaphorical. Each tick of the watch is a reminder of how fragile this existence is, a single misstep away from annihilation. The wind picks up, howling now, a banshee wail that claws at the canvas, threatening to tear it from its moorings. It feels like the land itself is screaming, a primal scream of pain and outrage. I pull the tattered blanket tighter around me, trying to find some semblance of warmth, some sliver of comfort in this desolate landscape. But there is none. Only the cold, hard reality of the present moment, the knowledge that I am utterly alone, a tiny speck of humanity adrift in a sea of violence and despair. The scent of wood smoke clung to her hair, a comforting aroma that always transported me back to simpler times. She was kneeling by the makeshift fire pit, her face illuminated by the flickering flames, her eyes reflecting the dancing light like twin pools of amber. Her hands, calloused and strong, deftly turned the skewers laden with vegetables, her movements graceful and precise, despite the harshness of our surroundings. "Almost ready," she said, her voice a low, soothing murmur that cut through the ever-present tension. I watched her, mesmerized, as she worked. We had known each other our whole lives, had grown up together in the shadow of the mountains, sharing secrets whispered under starry skies and dreams woven from the fabric of our shared heritage. She was the anchor that held me steady, the unwavering light that guided me through the darkest storms. Before the war, we were inseparable, two halves of a whole, our lives intertwined like the roots of ancient trees. We talked about everything, laughed about nothing, and shared 1,000 unspoken understandings. I remember the day she left for the front, her face etched with a mixture of fear and determination. I had tried to dissuade her, begged her to stay, but her resolve was unshakable. She had kissed me then, a lingering, tender kiss that spoke volumes of unspoken love and unspoken fears. "I have to do this," she had said, her voice choked with emotion. "I have to fight for our home, for our future." And then she was gone, swallowed by the dust and chaos of war, leaving me behind with a heart full of dread. Now, seeing her here, alive and seemingly unharmed, was a miracle I hadn't dared to hope for. But I knew, looking into her eyes, that the war had changed her, had hardened her in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. The laughter lines around her eyes were deeper, the shadows beneath them darker, and there was a haunted quality to her gaze that sent a shiver down my spine. She had seen things, experienced things, that no one should ever have to endure. "Here," she said, handing me a skewer of roasted vegetables. "Eat. You look like you haven't slept in days." I took the skewer from her, our fingers brushing, and a jolt of electricity surged through me. It was a simple gesture, a small act of kindness, but in that moment, it felt like the most profound expression of love and connection. I knew then that no matter what horrors we had faced, no matter what scars we carried, we would face them together. We always had. And somehow, that made the darkness a little less frightening, the landmines a little less deadly. The rain stopped. Just like that. As if some celestial director had yelled, "Cut!" The sudden silence was almost more jarring than the relentless drumming on the corrugated iron roof. I looked at Anya. Her face, illuminated by the faint glow of the morning sky filtering through the grimy window, was tear-streaked but resolute. She hadn't said a word since my confession. Just stared, her eyes reflecting a depth of pain I couldn't fathom. The silence stretched, taut and suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension, to rewind the clock to before I'd shattered the fragile peace we built. But the words wouldn't come. They were trapped, choked by the weight of my betrayal. Finally she stood, her movements slow and deliberate. She walked to the window, her back to me, and stared out at the ravaged landscape. The first rays of sunlight were painting the shattered buildings in hues of orange and gold, a cruel juxtaposition against the devastation. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the distant rumble of artillery. "Why tell me now? After all this time? After everything we've been through?" I rose and moved towards her, but stopped a few feet away, afraid to touch her, afraid of what I might find. "Because I couldn't keep it inside anymore," I said, my voice hoarse. "It was eating me alive. I had to tell you the truth, no matter the cost." She turned, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and hurt. "The cost? You think you know the cost? You think you understand what this does to me? To us?" She took a step closer, her voice rising. "We were building something here, Dmitri. Something real. Something sacred. And you just threw it away." The words hit me like a physical blow. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to explain that I hadn't meant to hurt her, that I'd been trying to protect her. But the truth was, I'd been protecting myself. And in doing so, I'd destroyed the one thing that truly mattered. I reached out to her, my hand trembling. "Anya, please." She flinched away from my touch. "Don't," she said, her voice cold and hard. "Don't touch me. I need time." She turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing alone in the ruins of our shared sanctuary. I heard the heavy metal door clang shut behind her, the sound echoing in the sudden, hollow silence. That was the day the war truly came home. The day the landmines exploded, not in the fields, but in my heart. The sun beats down on my face as I sit on the park bench, the rhythmic creak of the swing set a melancholic soundtrack to my thoughts. Children shriek with laughter, their carefree joy a stark contrast to the emptiness that gnaws at me. It's been 5 years since I left the Frontline. 5 years since I last saw Anya. 5 years of trying to rebuild a life shattered by guilt and regret. The nightmares still come. Sometimes I'm back in the trenches, the smell of cordite and decay filling my nostrils. Other times, I'm standing in that ruined room, watching Anya walk away, the image seared into my memory like a brand. Therapy helps, they say. Medication helps, they say. But nothing truly fills the void she left behind. I tried to find her, of course. After the war, I searched for months, following every lead, every rumor. But she had vanished, swallowed by the chaos and displacement that followed the ceasefire. Some said she'd gone to Poland. Others claimed she was working with a humanitarian organization in Africa. I even heard whispers that she'd returned to the front, fighting with a different unit. But none of it was confirmed. She was gone. A ghost in a land haunted by ghosts. I see her face everywhere. In the eyes of a woman walking down the street. In the curve of a stranger's smile. In the fleeting reflection in a shop window. Each time, my heart leaps with a flicker of hope, only to be crushed by the realization that it's just another illusion. Another reminder of what I lost. What I destroyed. The doctors call it PTSD. They say it's a normal reaction to trauma. But it feels like more than that. It feels like a punishment. A constant, unwavering reminder of the terrible things I've done, the terrible choices I've made. I try to move on. I try to build a new life. I have a good job, a comfortable apartment, friends who care about me. But the happiness feels hollow. Like a cheap imitation of the real thing. Because without Anya, everything is just empty. The landmines are gone, but the scars they left behind run deep. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that I will carry them with me for the rest of my days. The war may be over, but for me, it never truly ends. Block 5. The dawn broke not with trumpets, but with the whimper of a dying wind. The gray sky, heavy with unshed tears, mirrored the landscape, scarred, broken, but stubbornly alive. We stood on the precipice, the front line now a distant memory, swallowed by the relentless advance. My hand, still trembling faintly, reached out to touch the cold, weathered stone of the village church, the only structure left standing, a silent sentinel overseeing the devastation. It was over. We had pushed them back, driven them from our land, but at what cost? The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional cough of a soldier or the distant caw of a scavenging crow. A silence heavier than any artillery barrage, a silence that spoke of absence, of loss, of a future forever altered. I found Anya sitting amidst the rubble, cradling a small, wooden doll, its painted face chipped and faded. Her eyes, usually bright with defiance, were dull, haunted by the ghosts of what she had seen. I knelt beside her, offering a silent comfort, a shared understanding that transcended words. Days blurred into weeks. The work of rebuilding began, a slow, agonizing process of piecing together shattered lives and shattered dreams. We cleared rubble, planted seeds in the ravaged earth, and tried to find a semblance of normalcy in a world that would never be normal again. The landmines remained, a constant, lurking threat, a grim reminder of the war that had passed. Each step was measured, each breath held, as we navigated the treacherous landscape, both physical and emotional. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I found Dmitri sitting by the makeshift graves, his shoulders slumped with sorrow. He was holding a photograph, a faded image of a young woman with a radiant smile. "My wife," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She always loved the sunsets." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain I knew all too well. "What was it all for, Sergei? What did we gain?" I looked at the graves, at the faces etched in the makeshift wooden crosses, at the endless rows of sunflowers beginning to bloom amidst the devastation. We had gained nothing, and everything. We had lost lives, homes, innocence, but we had also found something within ourselves, a resilience, a courage, a love for our land that burned brighter than any fire. "We gained the right to watch the sunset, Dmitri," I said softly. "We gained the right to rebuild, to remember, to hope." The resolution wasn't a grand victory parade or a triumphant declaration of peace. It was the quiet dignity of a people picking up the pieces, the unwavering determination to create a future from the ashes of the past. It was Anya planting a sunflower in the rubble, Dmitri sharing stories of his wife with his children, and me, finally able to sleep through the night, knowing that the landmines were being cleared, one by one, and that the sun would rise again, bringing with it the promise of a new dawn. The war was over, but the battle for peace, for healing, for remembrance, had just begun. And we would fight it, together, one step at a time, until the land was safe, and the hearts were whole again.